before factories filled the skyline, before America called itself industrial. There were hands like his shaping the nation, one gear at a time. His name was Hezekiah Grice. A free black man born in a slave state, a machinist, an engineer, and a thinker whose ideas would help spark the very beginnings of organized black activism in America. This is the story of a man who believed freedom could be engineered. Hezekiah Grice was born in Calvert County, Maryland, around 1801, a time when freedom itself had rules, and for people who looked like him, those rules could change overnight. Maryland was a land of contradictions. Slaves worked the fields, while a few free black families struggled to survive just miles away. His parents were among them free, but never safe. They lived with a truth that haunted every sunrise. Freedom in name could still vanish in the dark. As a child, Hezekiah watched his father repair broken tools, building and fixing with quiet precision. His mother taught him lessons by lamplight about courage, faith, and the power of knowledge. His father would say, "A man who learns how things work can't be owned by anyone." That line would stay with Hezekiah for the rest of his life. He began to see machines, gears, pulleys, metal as more than work. He saw them as symbols, pieces of a system that could be understood and maybe reassembled. By the 1820s, Grice moved to Baltimore. Baltimore was alive, a city of noise and ambition. Ships came and went from the docks. Steam and sweat filled the air. Black laborers, both free and enslaved, worked side by side. It was a city split in two, one part freedom, one part oppression. Here, Hezekiah found work as a machinist, one of the few skilled trades open to free black men. He studied blueprints, memorized the motion of gears, learned how power was built, both mechanical and social. But skill couldn't buy equality. Baltimore's laws told free black people where they could live, how they could work, and even when they could be out after dark. They paid taxes, but couldn't vote. They followed the law, but weren't protected by it. Grice was surrounded by contradictions, and his mind refused to rest. At night, after long hours in the workshop, Hezekiah began to write letters, essays, arguments, calling out the hypocrisy of a nation that preached liberty while practicing bondage. He questioned America's promises, not with anger, but with logic. His words were deliberate, intelligent, mechanical, each one a piece of a larger design. He wrote, "We are taxed as citizens, judged as citizens, punished as citizens, but not protected as citizens." And then he asked the question that shook his peers: if America will not have us as sons, perhaps we must seek another home. His words spread quietly from one free man to another. Across letters and church meetings, they sparked conversations about migration, about building new communities in Canada, Haiti, and Liberia. But Hezekiah's dream wasn't just to leave America. He wanted to challenge it. He believed the law itself could be tested, its logic dismantled by reason, and that maybe, just maybe, the Constitution could be forced to recognize black Americans as citizens. In 1828, Hezekiah met with other black thinkers in Baltimore, men like William Watkins and James Dever. Together, they formed what they called the Legal Rights Association, one of the first organized black advocacy groups in U.S. history. Their goal was simple: to study the laws, gather evidence, and find a way to argue for the rights of free people of color in the courts. But the times were dangerous. Even free black men risked their safety just by gathering to talk. To dream of equality was to risk being labeled a radical or worse. Still, Grice persisted. He saw himself not as a rebel, but as an engineer building something new, piece by piece. And then came his boldest idea yet. If black men across the country could unite, not in protest, But in discussion, maybe they could form a national strategy, not chaos, but order, not revolt, but reason. So in 1829, Grice began writing letters to black leaders across the northern states, ministers, teachers, entrepreneurs, inviting them to meet in Philadelphia. It would be the first gathering of its kind, a meeting of free black mind, a convention to decide the fate of their people. That idea, born in a machinist's workshop, would soon grow into something far greater than Hezekiah ever imagined. The meeting he inspired would take place in 1830 at Mother Bethlehem Church. It would be called the First National Negro Convention. And though Grice himself would remain mostly behind the scenes, his spark lit the fire. He had proven that the power to shape a nation didn't come only from armies or politics, but from thought, collaboration, and courage. In the years to come, Hezekiah Grice would continue to write, to organize, to dream. He would even leave America for Haiti, believing that perhaps true freedom could be found beyond its borders. But the blueprint he left behind, the idea that black Americans could assemble, plan, and demand equality as citizens, would echo through generations. From Frederick Douglass to the civil rights leaders a century later, each one followed a path that began with the careful hands of a machinist who believed liberty could be built, one gear at a time. This is the legacy of Hezekiah Grice, a man who saw the flaws in America's design and dared to imagine how to fix them. In the summer of 1830, the city of Philadelphia pulsed with restless energy. America was changing, but not for everyone. The Cotton Empire was growing, slave patrols grew stronger, and even in the so-called free North, black citizens faced laws that chained them in silence. Yet, amid that tension, a quiet revolution was taking form. And at the center of it stood the idea of one man, Hezekiah Grice. His letters had traveled hundreds of miles, from Baltimore to New York, from Boston to Cincinnati, calling for something that had never been done before. A convention of free black men, not a riot, not a rebellion, a council of reason, of dignity, of vision. They would meet to decide their future as a people, to discuss whether freedom could be found within America or beyond it. On September 5th, 10th, 1830, delegates began to arrive in Philadelphia. They came by horse, by carriage, and by foot ministers, teachers, businessmen, and activists. Men who carried not only their names, but the weight of millions who had no voice. Among them was Bishop Richard Allen, founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. One of the most respected black leaders of his time, it was in his church, Mother Bethel AME, that the gathering would take place. The pews were filled, the air was thick with expectation. Some came wearing fine coats, others came in the plain clothes of labor. But they were united by one shared truth. America had given them freedom in name, but not in life. When the meeting began, there were no cameras, no microphones, no headlines, only pens, ink, and conviction. The men debated deep into the night. They argued about migration, education, and self-defense. They questioned whether black Americans could ever be accepted as equals in the land that enslaved them. One man said, "We have waited for the promises of America to include us, and they never will." Another rose and declared, "This is our home. We built it. We bled for it, and we will not abandon it." The room grew tense. Hezekiah Grice listened from the side, his hand resting on his notes. He was not the loudest man there, but his idea had built the room they stood in. Outside, the world remained hostile. White newspapers mocked the idea of a Negro convention. Some called it foolish, others called it dangerous. But inside that church, something sacred was happening. For the first time in American history, free black men were shaping their own agenda by choice, not by permission. They formed committees, drafted resolutions, and began to think as a nation within a nation. Education became their rallying cry. They proposed schools for black children, built by their own hands, funded by their own communities. They spoke of industry, of owning land, mastering trades, and creating a foundation of independence. And they spoke of migration not as surrender, but as strategy. A plan to build safe havens in Canada and Haiti where freedom could grow without fear. By the convention's end, a new spirit had been born. It wasn't the spirit of rebellion, but of responsibility. Hezekiah Grice had proven that unity was possible, that scattered voices could become a chorus. The delegates left Philadelphia carrying more than paper resolutions. They carried a blueprint, a model that would be repeated again and again for the next 30 years. From 1830 to 1864, Black national conventions would meet across the country in New York, Chicago, Buffalo, and beyond, each one in its own way. Traced its roots back to the spark, Hezekiah Grice ignited in Baltimore. But history can be cruel to quiet heroes. While the names of orators and ministers echoed through the years, Grice has faded into the margins. He never sought fame, he sought function, like the gears he once built. He believed his role was to make things move, not to stand in the spotlight. After the convention, he continued to advocate for justice, but by the late 1830s, America had shown him its answer. Violence against free blacks grew worse, laws became harsher, the door to citizenship seemed to close tighter with every passing year. And so, Hezekiah Grice made a choice, a painful one. He left America. He sailed for Haiti, the world's first black republic, born out of revolution and defiance. He saw it as a new experiment, a place where men like him could finally live as equals. But even there, life was not easy. The dream of unity often clashed with reality. Still, Grice remained teaching, working, writing until the end of his life. Though history records few of his final years, one thing remains clear. He left behind a design not of metal and steam, but of minds and movements. In 1834, a ship set sail from the port of Baltimore. Among the passengers stood a quiet man with a mind full of plans and a heart full of disappointment. His name was Hezekiah Grice, machinist, thinker, dreamer, and now, exile. He was leaving a nation he had tried so hard to fix, the nation that refused to see him as a citizen. For more than a decade, Grice had written, organized, and fought through reason. He built ideas instead of armies. He turned words into architecture. But America answered him with silence and laws that made his freedom feel smaller by the day. By the 1830s, new restrictions swept across Maryland and the northern states. Free black men could be jailed for lack of papers. They could be whipped, fined, or forced into servitude under false accusations. Even the right to gather to think was seen as a threat. So, when the invitation came to join a new colony of black citizens in Haiti, Hezekiah Grice took it as a sign he wasn't running away. He was testing a theory. If America was broken beyond repair, perhaps freedom could be built somewhere else. Haiti was a different world, hot, loud, and alive with history. The first black republic on earth. A nation born from rebellion, proof that slaves could defeat an empire. To Grice, it was more than a country. It was a laboratory of freedom. He believed Haiti could show the world what black self-governance looked like, a place where intelligence and dignity ruled instead of color and chains. But Haiti was still struggling to define itself. Decades after its revolution, it carried the scars of isolation and foreign debt. European powers refused to trade with it. America, still a slave nation, treated it like a ghost. Grice arrived with dreams of progress, but found a people still rebuilding from ashes. He joined other educated MAGs from America. Teachers, preachers, farmers, and craftsmen, each carrying the same fragile hope that Haiti could become a beacon for the black world. Together, they opened schools, repaired machines, and taught children to read and write. Hezekiah worked as a teacher and advisor, blending his knowledge of mechanics with lessons in reason and morality. He told his students that freedom wasn't only the absence of chains, it was the presence of understanding. Though far from home, he continued to write letters to friends in Baltimore, to ministers in Philadelphia, to scholars in London, and Haiti's government itself. Few of those letters survived, but the ideas inside them traveled further than he could. He wrote of self-sufficiency, of education as revolution, of unity among African-descended peoples around the world. He wrote that liberation without learning was a structure without foundation. And through those words, Grice became part of something larger, the early roots of Pan-African thought. While he taught in Haiti, his influence quietly spread across America. In Philadelphia, Frederick Douglass would rise, a man shaped by the same ideas Grice once wrote in secret. Douglass would speak of reason, moral strategy, and the power of organized black intellect. In New York, Henry Highland Garnet and Martin Deloney would organize new conventions, modeled directly after the one Grice had sparked in 1830, each gathering more sophisticated, more strategic, more confident. The machine he built in Baltimore was now in motion. History moved forward, the Civil War came, emancipation followed, and a century later, the Civil Rights Movement would rise on the same framework. Hezekiah designed letters, meetings, organized demands, nonviolent intellect, and moral pressure. The same blueprint repeated again and again. And yet, his name remained missing, buried in old letters, forgotten in dusty archives. The engineer whose mind shaped the movement was written out of the machine he built. But ideas, like gears, never stopped turning. Every community meeting, every civil rights convention, every black college founded in the name of self-determination, every activist who says we can build something better, they are all living echoes of Hezekiah Grice. He proved that freedom is not just a feeling, it's a design, one that must be built, maintained, and repaired by every generation that inherits it. Hezekiah Grice died far from home, in a land he believed in. No monuments mark his grave, no textbook tells his story. But his legacy isn't in marble. It's in the movements that still meet in basements and boardrooms, and the activists who still write letters that change laws, and the dreamers who still believe that progress begins not with power, but with plan. Hezekiah Grice was not a general. He never led an army. He didn't shout, he built. And in the quiet rhythm of his work, he showed that the tools of a machinist could one day turn the gears of a nation. Hezekiah Grice, engineer, educator, and architect of the first National Negro Convention. Freedom is a machine, and every generation must keep it running. Hezekiah Grice built the blueprint. Now it's our turn to keep the gears moving. Every story deserves to be remembered. Like this video to keep the memory alive, and subscribe so you can journey with us through history.